Coach Randy Jackson, thank you so much for coming on the Christian Coach podcast. I'm so glad we're able to make this happen. Our first question to every guest is, what does it mean to you to be a Christian coach?
Well, first of all, Gian, thanks for having me on. What an honor. Really, really excited to be here. For me, a Christian coach is someone who is the most important person in the town. Right now, I'm talking about small towns, but a Christian coach is the most important person in the community. Because I heard a preacher say this one time that, hey, his son is a head football coach in a small town in Texas. And he said, my son is the most important person in town because he has all denominations. He has a big flock and he's got them for 3 hours a day. So preachers are important and all, but Christian coaches can influence more guys, right? We all know what Billy Graham said about the 22,000, but a Christian coach is the most important person in the community. And I firmly believe God will, like, with much responsibility, or with much power becomes much responsibility. And I think I will stand before God one day and he'll hold me accountable if I did his work or not with all the students that I was in charge of.
Yeah. That's a great answer. How have you been able to be that light, be that the messenger to hundreds and thousands of players that you've come in contact with? What are some of the things that you do on a regular basis that allow you to then be able to pour into your athletes?
Well, I'm at a public school, so I think there's a tightrope there.
That's right.
But I think that's even more important because at a private school, a Christian private school, of course, everything's important, but we've got kids who have never darkened the door of a church. And so there's two things I would like to share is I think it's your everyday walk. I think you want kids to look at you and say, hey, there's something different. This is how I want to be. I guess there's three things: your everyday walk, how you carry yourself. They ought to see something different about you. Your coaching staff would be number two. So I can't hire people. I can't interview people and ask them a whole lot about their faith, but you just kind of know.
Yeah.
So my coaching staff is a bunch of guys who are go to church and walk the walk. And then number three is you have to help mentor them. So we have an intentional group called Breakfast with Champions, and it's every game day morning. And what we do is we get adults in our community to adopt a kid for the year or for the season. Mm-hmm. And we have breakfast. These guys bring breakfast. They sit with their player, and we have a speaker. And a lot of times it will be a youth pastor. It's going to be a devotional. So it's a time where our kids will hear. I mean, we've had kids get saved at this, right? And again, we're at a public school, so there's a tightrope there to walk, but our guys are exposed. And so I think it is how you carry yourself, that they see it in you, the people you hire, it's got to be a part of it. And then who else can you put in front of them to help expose? And so we try to do it with a 3-pronged system.
Yeah. How have you been able to, and we have a lot of high school coaches that listen to that might be wondering, how can I find some assistant coaches that are followers of Christ without actually straight up asking them? Do you have any tips or anything that coaches can be looking for during the interview process?
I think it's easier said than done. For me, now I've been doing this for a while, so I have a network, but most of the time I can call someone and you can find out about them, right? Of a lot of things.
Yeah.
Also, I think when you interview, you talk about your faith and you talk about what drives you. You talk about the program. And so I think for sure they're going to know what we're about. They're going to know that we're going to play music at practice, and there will be zero profanity. They won't all be LaCroix or whatever, but there will be some mixed in there, and so they're going to just know where we are. And so I think it's about finding the right fit. And so I'm just going to make sure I paint the picture of what we are and ask them as close to the line as I can.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that's a great idea. I think it's just getting as close to that line without getting in trouble. I think we all, I'm at a Christian institution, and so I have a little bit more freedom, but I talk to other coaches who are very intentional in their approach, right? Without breaking any rules, because when you're breaking rules, then people will not listen to your message, And so that's some good tips in there. Let's go back to young Randy. If you had told young Randy that now you would be a high school football coach, what would he have said?
My dad was a coach.
Okay.
So I grew up in a small town, a town called Tenaha, Texas. I graduated with 33, 1,000 people in town, one red light, just something you might see in a movie. So my dad was the head football coach and the head basketball coach. And in East Texas, most people are Baptist. And so I don't think I grew up knowing a Catholic. And, so now I coach basically in outskirts of Dallas. Okay. So as an adult, I've been exposed to a lot of different things. But growing up, it was small town Southern Baptist. And it was a great place to grow up. I say this a lot. I'm proud I grew up there, but I wouldn't want to go back now. But I had maybe the typical experience. I think I was lucky. My grandfather was a deacon. My mom my mom to this day plays the organ every week at church. So I think she's been 40 something years right at this church. And sixth grade, I'm at a revival, and that I gave my salvation to the Lord. And so probably a little typical for a young kid growing up in a little small Southern Baptist town.
Yeah. How was being the son of a coach? Do you have any memories of you learning some lessons that maybe now you apply it yourself to your players?
Probably the biggest would be how to treat people. And it's not about X's and O's. And, I remember thinking, hey, why aren't we doing this? Or why aren't we doing this? As a young coach, even, wondering why my dad doesn't do it this way or why he doesn't do it this way. And as you get older, you just realize his whole secret was, and he won a bunch of games, or they won a state championship. And his whole secret was how he treated people. And so that's probably my biggest take home, is just how he invested in, honestly, poor kids. He was their father figure, and he was a lot of times the only male that they trusted. And that's my biggest take home, is to try to emulate that as much as possible.
Yeah. So then tell us, you transitioned to college and now coaching. How was that? What was going on in your life at that moment?
Went to college at what's now Louisiana Monroe, played football there. Another really, Southern atmosphere. Was lucky to be around a coaching staff that was not high profanity. And, we won a national championship in 1987. So we had some success. But Texas pays honestly quite a bit more than Louisiana. So when I graduated, I came back to Texas and just started that journey. And I think Urban Meyer calls it the 10-year sprint in your 30s. So in my 20s, I moved around from assistant job to assistant job. And then
at high schools in Texas?
Yeah, I've always been in high schools. And then at 30, I got my first head coaching job in a little town in West Texas called Paducah, 120 kids in the high school, and started a 10-year sprint.
Were they all football players? The 120 kids in the school?
No. I mean, total students in the school.
Yeah.
So I think we had 25 that played football. And so that was in 1999. And in 2000, so the smallest school in the state, or, the smallest classification. Yeah. And again, got on the 10-year sprint. And in 2013 was the head coach at the largest school in the state, Plano East, with 6,000 students. So moved too much, but moved up, I've kind of learned a lot of lessons. And now, I think my biggest take home I could share is it's not about being at the biggest, it's about being where you're the best fit. So Forney is 2,000 students, North Forney High School is 2,000 students, a lot more socioeconomic type of people that I'm more comfortable with. But yeah, I've been at, from the smallest to the biggest, and none of it matters unless it's the right fit.
Yeah. What was going through your mind and going through school to school, right? Why did you make those moves? And what was God teaching you through those moments as well?
Well, excuse me.
That's right.
I was moving up, right? So I went from 1A to 2A to a bigger 2A, got fired my third school, started back as a freshman coach, went back to 2A, got to a 4A job. And just to be real transparent with you guys, I was married 22 years and she lived in 15 houses.
That's crazy.
And she never, so in 2018, she told me she'd had enough and filed for divorce. And so I think the big lesson in this is, I never made her feel more important than my job. And so I think what you have to do as a coach is do what you do. Like go, you got to move. A coach that's going to say, I'm going to live in this one house and grow in the profession is probably delusional. So you have to move, but you have to do it in such a way, not as probably as much as I did. And I chased too hard. And then you got to do it in such a way too, where your wife or your spouse never feels like they're not as important. I think I got on that 10-year sprint. I started having success, and it just became I don't know if it's a drug, maybe, if you will, or, my mistress was success. And so I think that's probably what God has taught me looking back. We can always have 2020 looking back, but be careful, right? Be careful getting in that 10-year sprint. Be careful of thinking that next job is going to be the magic one. Find the place that's the right fit. Make sure your spouse knows she or he's more important. And I think it'll be more fulfilling.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being vulnerable. I think if we're all honest with ourselves, I think we, as coaches, have to struggle with that on a daily basis, having their priorities right, and acting on those priorities. We can say the priorities are there, but if we're not acting upon them, then that it becomes an issue.
It's just how we're made, right? We're high achievers. So anybody listening to this is a growth mindset coach. So we're all trying to get better. And it's hard to flip that switch. Someone told me this: when you get home, leave your phone in the garage for 2 hours, and then you can be present at home. Yep. But for me, and it's probably this way for you in tennis, it's just encompassing. Like, there's just always something you can do, and you love it.
Correct.
You want to get, it's just, it's in your DNA. But you got to find a way to put that phone in the garage and just be present, and, don't just let it be 24/7.
Yeah. I think that's the key, is we feel the need to be on 24/7, be on our phone. There's always recruiting, or there's, team issues, or there's always something that you can be doing. There's definitely always something you can be doing. But I think the successful coaches, the true successful coaches, are the ones who are able to separate a little bit, right? And be present wherever they are. And I think this, like, 2020 COVID year definitely taught me that, because then I wasn't able to coach. I wasn't able to go out recruiting. I wasn't able to do a lot of things. And God forced me to take a break and review all the priorities that I said I had, and really start acting on them.
Just got to be where your feet are, right?
Yeah.
Just be where your feet are. And it's so much easier said than done. But that would certainly be something I encourage everybody to do, is don't let it eat you up.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that. Now you started a website. When did you start the website, and why did you start the website? And where are you at with it right now?
Well, in 2015, so here's what, like what happens with most people in 2013, I was at the biggest high school in Texas, Plano East, was not happy, only stayed a year. We went 5-5, but that wasn't, the system was not, I just wasn't a good fit. So I leave there and go to Grapevine, which is right by the DFW airport. It's the only reason I mention it. But so I go to Grapevine and we're bad, right? So I had 2 bad years in a row. And so I hired a coach, which is what we should all do. You shouldn't wait till you're miserable to hire one. So I hired a coach named Brian Kane. He's a peak performance guy. And so I worked with him about a year, and he told me I should write a book. And so I wrote a book called Culture Defeats Strategy, and really was trying to sell 100 copies. But I've sold about 9,000 copies now. It's done really well. But that's where my website started, was to sell books. I've written another book called Culture Defeats Strategy 2. And then just to be real transparent with you guys again, when my ex-wife said, hey, I want a divorce. Well, she's going to take some of my retirement. And I thought, I got to start making some money with a side hustle. So I started selling resources on my website. I'm a big believer, this is a little side note, but I'm a big believer in team meetings. Coaches should have a short team meeting with their team every day, and there should be a movie clip in it. That from Jesus teaching with parables, we are all programmed for stories to resonate with us. And so I got to sit in on a PJ Fleck team meeting one time at the University of Minnesota football, and he talked about movie clips. And so I sell those type of things. Here's some leadership lessons with movie clips embedded. And so I've done pretty good. And then here last few months, I've started a mastermind, which is I have speakers. It's an interactive podcast like this, but we Zoom, and our members can ask questions. We go to small breakout rooms later. So there's just some of that kind of stuff, just entrepreneurial stuff, but all of it is to help serve coaches.
That's cool. That's cool. What have you seen recently, since you work with so many coaches, the biggest struggles that coaches are facing in today's game and today's society?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably, it's probably just navigating our society with parent meetings or players, right? Expectations and the specialization. People are specializing at 7 years old, right? They're being told they need to play one sport. And so all that comes with a lot of issues and a lot of expectations. And so when you're coaching a kid who has a private coach, and I know I'm probably preaching to the choir with tennis, but now there's all these expectations. And so it's a different ball game. I think, so I've been in it 31 years. I don't think the players are much different, or the athletes, but I think the parents are quite a bit different. So I just think that's probably the biggest thing. Like with our mastermind, we get to have small, like I say, we have conversations, and I got guys all over the country, and we talk about issues. We're not talking about scheme issues. We're not talking about how to score a touchdown from the 2. We're talking about how to create that culture, how to get our kids to be not selfish, those type of things that I think it's getting harder every year.
Yeah. Well, Coach Jackson, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a blessing hearing your story, hearing some of the lessons you've learned and that God has taught you. How can people find you, your website, and all the things that you're doing?
Well, I'm Twitter. I'm Coach Jackson TPW, stands for Tough People Win. And then my website is coachrandyjackson.com. So I do a blog every now and then, and I talk about culture and how to be a better coach, things like that. So you can subscribe and get stuff from me. But Gian, I'm honored to be here. I've gotten to do a few podcasts over the years, but this is the first Christian one I've got to do. And so I tip my cap to you guys, because I know your heart's in the right place, and I know what y'all stand for. And I'm honored to get to be just a little small part of it. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. We would like to pray for you as we move on here. How can we be praying for you?
Really just for God to help me in my walk. I'm trying to navigate some waters of how much longer I want to coach, and how much I want to go full time into my mastermind. And so really, I guess it would just be just the navigation of what short-term future. That'd be
Okay.
great.
All right. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for the vulnerability and honesty of Coach Jackson and sharing his story and his struggles and his lessons that you've taught him throughout all these years coaching. Father, I pray that you, as he tries to make some decisions here, life decisions, Father, that he'll seek you first, Lord, that he'll put you as priority number one on a daily basis so that he can hear from you, Father, that he won't be too focused on talking, but that he'll be focused on hearing the steps that you want him to take, and that he'll remain faithful in those decisions, or that we know that you know best for all of our lives and all of our careers. Um, Lord, thank you again that he's able to touch so many lives and his athletes and coaches that he works with. And Lord, keep him filled up with your word and your love so that he can share with so many others. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
My last question is, you've now coached for so many years. You've had to deal with college coaches recruiting your players. What are some practical tips that you would give high school coaches that so they can help their athletes find the right school?
First thing that comes to my mind is you got to make it easy, right? You have to be prepared, right? For us, when we have guys come by, we've got things to give them. We have things online, but we're prepared, and we try to make it as easy as possible. So we don't ask college coaches to come in, and we don't send them to the counselor's office to get a transcript. We've already got it for them. So we're just going to make it as easy as possible. We want them to want to come to North Forney because we're going to spend time with them. So we're going to treat everybody the same. We're not going to be too busy, but we're going to make it as easy as possible when they get here, where they don't need to jump through any hoops. It's one-stop shopping, and we're going to be honest with them, but we're going to make it easy.
Yeah. And for your players, what are some things that you tell them on a yearly basis as they try to navigate this recruiting world?
We tell them that, we try to coach them up like on their Twitter profiles and how to handle themselves with social media. We tell them you must go to camps. Kind of funny, but we tell them to cut in line at camps. Like don't be that guy that, don't be a jerk, but get noticed. So make sure when somebody good is going, go against him. What do you have to lose? Because if you don't go, you're not going to get noticed. And so take a chance. But it's all about taking care of things other than football too, right? Grades, but your Twitter profile, all that stuff, and then get exposed with as many camps as you can go to.
Yeah, it's not just about talent anymore in recruiting. It's a lot more than just that.
Agree.
Yeah. Well, Coach Jackson, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Gian. It was an honor.